Thank you very much for coming, and you can have the floor, Aaron. Good morning, all. And let's
Ahí vamos. Bueno,
let me begin with my presentation. I don't know why this is not working, but in any case, this is me, but I've been introduced, so I'm going to skip this.
suelo decir que bueno, eso, soy consultor
I'm a consultant,
y también colaboro de vez en cuando con una entidad que es el
and
industrial y bueno,
I
profesional reconocido ahí
work for Global Industrial and Cybersecurity.
que si os empieza a molar el mundillo industrial
And I work in the industrial domain, and here we have different types of technologies. In any case, if you are interested in what I do in this respect, you can go into the website. Let's speak about embedded systems. Some people call them integrated systems, but in any case, we're going to see what they are, where we can see them, and what we can do with them. Industrial embedded systems. We're going to speak about embedded systems, but in the industrial sector, because this is an area where I know more about. And then we're going to be speaking about attacks, defense against attacks. I'm going to show you a demo, and then I'm going to go for the conclusions as regards the introduction of embedded systems. What are they? These are systems made up by hard and software. We may find different types of hardware. We're not going to go into the architecture of different devices, which is what we do, and there's lots of software, dedicated functions covering certain specific needs. So therefore, these devices and software systems are not too expensive. They are tailor-made, and therefore there are many people who use them in order to satisfy certain needs. And they can do tasks in real time. This is very important from an industrial point of view, because in the industry the important thing is availability, so response times must be very short, and capabilities are limited, because the development is not costly, and things, when good, need to be paid for. And what about the evolution of these systems? The first embedded system was present in the Apollo spaceship, and industrially, how did this start to evolve? Where somebody in the production chain said, listen, every time a new device comes, we need to take it to assembly. Why don't we automate this, just like people automate their scripts? So this is how the first PLC was born. It was called Modicon A24, and it was a response in order to improve the efficiency of the automation sector. I don't know if you know or heard about Texas Systems. I'm sure you have. And they created the first microcontroller. And here are the characteristics: 4 bits with ROM and RAM functions. A luxury at the time. Communications were developed between programmable logical controllers, and the first system was Modicon. Something which by defect is vulnerable. I don't know if you've worked with Modbus. I know some people here who do know Modbus. And then microcontrollers have improved. Right now we can see different boards that contain the communications and other communications. But here we have these, just to give you an example. And right now, this is the state of the affairs. The hardware components in embedded systems, the whole range of components. You have the processor, memory, there's the RAM, flash, and then communications. There may be serial port communications, USB communications, Ethernet, and wireless hack, which is also an industrial protocol that communicates. Some examples where we may find embedded systems in cars, and information of the cars with CPMSs, the measures regarding tire pressure, kiosks. Here we can find many places. There were a few here. Routers, mobile phones, industrial devices, of course, and toasters. I include this because I thought it was funny, toasters, and especially this one. There are some projects around in Kickstarter, etc. It's funny, if you want to go and take a look. And something that's very interesting is also smart houses, smart fridges, smart everything. And that's somehow dangerous, It's because some of these devices have web access through HTTP without any security certificate, or the communication is not encrypted. And apart from this, you have double SH, depending on the communication algorithm you have, and also Telnet, which is not too good either, because it's a protocol, and FTP, which is better than others. But in any case, you can carry out different functions. You can control lighting, charging centers for electric cars, temperature, ventilation, alarms, music, window shades, awnings, everything. And also, this is a quick search of a manufacturer that has embedded systems and smart.
Y me pareció curioso comentarlo. Hay 109 en España, ¿vale?
There are 109 in Spain.
Para flipar un poco, ¿no?
Funny, yes. And then embedded operating systems. Let's move to the software part. What do we find here? We have embedded Windows, Internet of Things, Windows, Tiny OS, Cisco OS, embedded Linux, and then some of the best known VxWorks that works in real time, and rugged operating system that you may find different manufacturers, industrial embedded systems. Let's start with this. So we start speaking about rugged operating systems. Where can we find these operating systems? Personally, I've seen them in switches of industrial manufacturers, for instance, where you may find all sorts of things. I don't know. Later, I'll tell you what can be done on the level of attacks, etc. This search was funny because somebody in .com and left his print here, so the information says control station with a print hacked by a random hackster. And Metaexploit, you have a module that's quite interesting. And here you can see how to create passwords. Passwords were based on the of the device. If you want more information, you can go into Metaexploit, etc. Vulnerabilities. As you can see, there's a few, especially service denial. Why? Because on an industrial level, availability is very important. So if you have a service denying your website, when when you're selling socks. It's horrible, but if I sell cars, it's even worse. I don't know. You have bypassing, all sorts of things, vulnerabilities, all sorts. And maybe some that don't even show up here, and that's trying to be reported right now. And VX works. One of the operating systems that's more extended throughout the world. Very quickly, VX works. And you change the banner, no problem. Other ways to find it, but anyways, 17,843. Take out the Honeypot, or somebody who's changed the banner just for the fun of it. Was the most extended thing, FTP. So therefore, the most extended service is FTP. Then you can access and get information from these systems, some binaries and website configuration. FTP maybe as anonymous access active in FTP. You can do several things in order to be able to access. Yes, no, well, you cannot do it. So service denial. This is one of the vulnerabilities of VXO works, and one of the more extended versions is this one. Here we see the different versions. VX works in Spain, same thing basically. And there's 176 searches. Then you can go into SUMI and other engines, different devices. You may correlate them and say maybe this is a Honeypot. And well, this depends, it's up to everybody. Here there's a fancy engine banner, and FTP is tornado. Tornado. Well, I don't think you can read it on any slide, but it's a tornado. Vulnerabilities, several here, and I think you can see it here. And if it doesn't, this is what I told you. It's got a few. And in general, we have denials, because like I said, industry people deal with doing research on this sort of vulnerabilities. Personally, I like finding something other than service vulnerabilities, something that's more subtle, and for everybody to just click enter, and in the industry, it's very complex to have an IPX, and the level of communication is very difficult to cut communication, because if you put in an IPX and there's a safety problem, and you need to stop a mushroom, we need to be careful. This affects the safety of people. VxWorks, Metasploit. Here you can download on the memory, reboot the device. Look at VxWorks, etc. Attacks. Well, here we're going to spend a bit more time. Here we see how they evolved, how attackers, hackers evolved, their experience and the sophistication of their attacks. Obviously, people start developing certain skills. This is why their attacks are more sophisticated with time. Here you can see different attacks and the tracking of passwords, backdoors, sniffers, service denial. And now We're going to talk about attacks, defense, and then I'm going to try and show you a demo where you can see all this. Just about everything. Protocols shared in TI environments like HTTP, Telnet, FTP, TF, TP, and then industrial specific ones, the C104, C101. I don't know if there are many people here working in the industrial sector. I'm sure many of you are related to this, but I don't know whether you are all in the industrial, whether all have this industrial mindset, or you. But if you are more interested, please let me know. And there's Modbus, EtherCAT, and DNP3. That's more broadly used in the US. Default configurations, no matter how surprising this may sound, you may have many configurations by default, admin and admin, lots of it, root, user. You're going to find hundreds of these. And there's a group of people interested in hacking industrial control. They have a site where they put in all the passwords of many manufacturers. If you ever need to do a pen test or an intrusion test or any analysis of a device, you may find many default credentials. Of course, there are many more in the internet. You may find, I don't know, such and such manufacturer default password, bunch of them. Maybe you have to come up with a tailor-made dictionary in the end, or glossary of different things. This is something that I came across in one of the things I did. It says 1980. Okay, you go, wow, 1980? There's an explanation to this, because the system, the VX work system, what it did was to reboot the information on time data. This is why you always saw 1980. Another funny thing is that it's got all the permits from the point of view of users, group, and summary. No matter who you go in with, no problem. And there's user logging .xml, and this is what you thought it was. Here we have the users stored, and here you may see, I don't know, level users where it says encrypt, that's the encryption, and it says N for nothing. Well, could have said yes, people said no, but as to the users, well, not much to be said. Users with maximum rights or privilege. So that's because there are people who have a device and they don't know they have two users, or two super users with a maximum level of privilege or rights. What more attacks can you do? Firmware analyses. Here you may package everything, upload it again. You can do many things. Application codes with embedded passwords, embedded information, routes. This was an access to a website. The web application had an embedded route.
Yo qué sé, el proc CPU info, que también me muestres el ETC PassWD o el ETC Shadow, ¿vale? Entonces, bueno, lo tienes ahí para buscar información, filtración de datos, lo que tú quieras, lo que se te pueda ocurrir, ¿vale?
Everything. Use of technologies without support or out of date. This is a good thing about these things, that you find technologies that you have to find in the internet because they're long gone and nobody knows about it. There's the Cherokee 1, and the last version of Cherokee was April 21st, 2013 in Drop Bear. February 23rd, BOA POA server 2008, and release in 2017. Maybe this has to do with devices limitations. We're saying that embedded systems have certain capabilities, and maybe they cannot include the new update of the drop.
Entonces, igual, por problemas de rendimiento, muchas veces.
The drop bear, and because of performance, this cannot be updated. So in the industrial world, there's always a fight going on, saying, well, this server, this is not the last version. Yes, I know, but I cannot update it. It's just simply impossible. So what you need to do is to use other methods. On the level of the network, you can put it under firewall. If it's got 10 net, you encapsulate the traffic. If you've 10 net, you're crazy. You need to change it. Absolutely. You cannot tell a client, say this to a customer, you need to make things easier on them, because maybe the system only supports 10 net, and implementing a different type of communication entails talking to the manufacturer. And because of the little experience I have, not that I have a lot of experience talking to manufacturers, but according to the little experience I have, they're not too much into changing or doing new things or adding things. Web attacks, and whoever likes enjoys web things, you're going to have a great time. You can do the most, from the most complex attacks down to the simplest ones. SQL, authentication, everything. As long as the version or the technology users is the vulnerable one. Service denials. What sort of attacks can we launch? The impact is brutal, tremendous. Sending malformed messages. I modify packages, I do a replay, and I inject it back into the network. You can do terrible things with a simple map in a network. You can collapse it, and you can make systems fail because you're putting noise into the network. So you've got to be really careful when it comes to using automated tools. Don't even dare using Metasploit. Don't you dare doing this in production, because if you do, the gonna beat you up. And the automated tools without a control.
También es parte del aprendizaje, ¿no?
And this is all part of learning. We're using somebody else's tool. What it does,
yo algo mío, un script mío.
Can I use some other tool? May I use one of my scripts that will do the same thing? It's going to cost more, but you'll learn. You also learn more. Then running exploits. If they let you run exploits, you're lucky. You get lucky.
Puedes realizar scripts a medida que tampoco sean muy agresivos.
And also you can launch customized scripts if you explain it to them how you are going to do it, at what time of the day you're going to do it. You may be allowed to do it. Well, defense and recommendations. What can we do against these attacks? Well, I've picked a few. Well, there are many more, of course. There are many attacks you can unleash. I just selected the most representative ones, or the ones that first came to my mind, actually. Anyway, encoded protocols, encrypted protocols. We can try to turn these protocols into secured encrypted protocols, whether they are HTTPS, SSH, or SFTP. That depends a little bit on the system we're working on and on the hardware characteristics of the system, because sometimes it's impossible. The industrial specifics are wireless HART, which was thought with security in mind. It is conceived to have several security layers, so this may be a good option. DNPSec, which is DNP3 secure, and OPC-UA, which is the OPC bus with a security approach. And of course, the use of integrity in the control of sets. Make sure they follow a certain numbering. So then the capture of events, for example, the attempts of wrongful accesses. What we do now is using port mirrors, stamp ports or tamps, it doesn't matter how you call them, but they redirect the traffic. They send it to a device that the manufacturer provides. That device is usually a probe that has a central dashboard that enables you to watch all the traffic and graphs. It is some sort of snore, but more professionalized, because snores are okay, but on the industrial level, their response isn't as good as expected. What I need is that they analyze many different packages in real time and show them back to me. So this may be complex. You need to fine-tune it. It's not maybe used in several areas, but not in all of them. Detection of anomalies in the network. Here we're talking about very advanced malware detection. For example, in Destroyer, which was launched not long ago, a modular malware with IO104 modules, and maybe Black Energy, which was a bit more well-known, that affected a substation in Ukraine. And what it basically did was to open and close electric switches. The malware was introduced. It came from a spear phishing, a very highly customized phishing. This was a state-level phishing sort of attack involving important people. So they would send a macro inside an Excel file or a PowerPoint file. And the malware spread throughout the industrial network. It sent the IAC 104 requests with a single comma. This was a single comma rather than a double comma. We're not going to go into details about industrial protocols. And they attained their goal. They managed to bring down an entire electrical substation in Ukraine in December, and I underline December, so someone was in real trouble, probably, yes. So here you can detect anomalies, because it's not normal that there are 20 attempts to open a switch. That is an anomaly. It is a lawful request, but it is anomalous. It isn't logical. Also, the access of unidentified machines to the network. Here we can mention the case of Mr. Robot, that he would take the Raspberry, plug it into the net, and he was free to go. Wow, that is a TV series, because he had to do a lot of things in order to plug something in the Raspberry. So if someone plugs something in your network, you should have some kind of intelligence to detect that. Also, there's the possibility of detecting malware or APTs. you can detect several anomalies and then perform an in-depth analysis with picats or with files that you think contain some malware. Then robust configurations. This may sound silly, but it is highly important. You may have the best firewall in the world, but if it isn't well fine-tuned, you can be easily attacked. You need white lists of processes. There are some point solutions on the industry level that protect PLCs and corporate computers. It may be with the same solution or with a different manufacturer, but they are basically based on white lists of processes, basically PLCs. Because of what we were talking about, performance, inside PLCs with embedded systems, it's not really that simple to introduce certain types of intelligence without that intelligence using up a lot of resources. You also need a correct management of the users. You cannot have a user and an admin, both of them being super users. You need role control. Then, the use of robust credentials. You cannot use default credentials or credentials which have a certain length that is now considered unsafe. You cannot use admin/admin. So, the modification of all default configurations and setups. If you don't need a function, a feature, or a parameter, certain manufacturers include functionalities that help exploit vulnerabilities. For example, you may get a function saying that you send HTTP requests with SOAC with some tags that enable you to obtain information. However, you can then find out that your tag can ask your device to reboot. Some people are aware of this, some customers don't, some manufacturers do, but they don't say it. And sometimes you discover it yourself and you realize that you can boot the machine remotely. So you have to be very careful about this functionalities, because sometimes they are unknown or undocumented. Then we also need to correctly manage privileges or rights. An operator and an admin shouldn't have the same rights or privileges, as an admin should take care of the most sensitive matters in the company. Of course, we need also to have logs. We need to have activity registries. It's not just about having a syslog and let them send requests no matter to whom. You have to take a look at it. That's why you have it. So here you can see user accesses. Imagine somebody is bored at home and starts gaining access to my factory because by coincidence found a PLC. Because that happens sometimes. You need to detect that kind of people who are trying to inject code or establish certain types of connections. If, for example, your entire company is in Spain, if there is an IP coming from Sri Lanka, you need to be suspicious, of course. And then a log revision, a review. It is good to have logs, but you have to constantly monitor them. Then an important point here is the one about honeypots. A lot of people talk about honeypots. They say they're great. It is great to have them in the nets. But, okay, what about it? You have it in your network, and then what? The powerful thing about honeypot is to see what kind of attacks are being launched against you. It's not just about running honeypots and forget about it forever. No, there's a lot more to it. You need to fine-tune it a little bit and mask it somehow. It's not just about using a well-known honeypot like Compot with a serial number, a banner. Everyone knows about it, even the attacker. So if you leave the banner, they are going to say, well, these aren't very smart guys. It is interesting to change the banner, to change the serial number, because everyone will be very easily detected. This is a honeypot. And then the review of the information, the power. And here I have a short demo that's not that alarm that you're listening to. I wanted to tell you a little bit about this demo. Some people may not be aware with HMI. This is an interface between the operator and the system, and it shows information on the status of the process. That's its main function, but it may perform modifications on touch panels, for example. This is pretty common in the industry as well. You hear beeps all the time, people talk to you at the same time and tell you, hack this, hack that. Anyway, there is this report on HMI drafted by Trend Micro. It's very interesting, from 2015-16, and it's very interesting if you want to learn more about HMI attacks and what to do about them. This is a network, the traditional company network with an industrial network. We have the corporate network with mobile phones, printers, laptops, routers, the common bread and butter in a company. And the bread and butter, I say it in the good sense, I mean. Then you have a data network with the historian, which is a way of collecting databases. Then you have the information acquisition system that displays on the screen what is going on inside the net at all times. And then the engineering station, where programmers are, where they program PLCs or any devices they may use, and where they upload strategies or the programs for the device. Then there is a control area with remote controls, PLCs, and HMIs. I've underlined HMIs because this demo is based on an attack to an HMI, and then you have the field network with all the devices in motion. So this is the demo. Well, this looks a bit lame, but this is the best we could get. So the 185 is the attacker, the 110 is the operator, and the 126 is the HMI I designed for this occasion. So we're going to play a video with several attacks. I'm going to make short breaks in order to explain what's going on. Well, there is not much explanation required here. This is the scanning of the machine we are attacking. It's important to use automatized tools. I did this because I am at home, and I don't care if the device crashes, because this is actually a Raspberry. It's not that I don't care, but it's not really important. If something happens, I can accept the consequences. But in the industries, it's not advisable to launch an Nmap, particularly if you are in production. You can use other things. You can launch a query of the RP table to see what devices you have. You can analyze an Excel file. This sounds easy, but it isn't really so. And you can use Port Mirror in order to detect all the assets inside the network. Of course, you can create your own script, take a look at the services, but by hand rather than automatic. Here we can see the different services: SSH, HTTP, VNC, remote desktop, and VRC also. So let's see what we can do about this. So this is the HMI. Here you can see it working, how it turns on and off. I don't know why you can't see the full screen. So, we know this is a Raspberry. Let's pretend this is an industrial manufacturer, and all I know is the name. First thing to do, well, we can look for default passwords on the internet. Let's see what the default password is. P Raspberry. So let's try this. This looks silly, and it doesn't give a very professional image of me as a hacker, but it works many times. This is a fact. Then, brute force with dictionaries. This is very simple also. But when you launch a brute force attack, the device may crash, so be careful. Maybe your attack shouldn't be so aggressive. Maybe you can chop the packages, use certain parameters, or use a script. This is a bit more old school than what it looks. It is easier, you don't have to launch privilege elevation attacks, etc., but still. Then we found the user and the password. Here are the services. Let's go through them. And let's see which ones we can attack. VNC, for example, since we are on local, we can use Metasploit. There are several modules for VNC, virtual desktop that is working. So this attack in particular would require a little bit more of social engineering. As we can see it on the screen, this is the attack as such, but it isn't really very elaborate. This is something for us to see only. So here we can use the module that captures credentials via VNC inside the network. So what we have to do in this case is indicate the victim, that is the operator, that the machine they are about to hook to is a legitimate one. They are thinking that it is a legitimate machine, but it really isn't. And here is the communication with the password. So if you look at it, you may think that this is really not much. Of course, we would need to elaborate a little bit more, maybe use some man-in-the-middle stuff. So here are the passwords. They went through the file. Our password is on top. The one below is just a test one. So let's try to disclose it. We can use a dictionary. We can try to avoid dictionaries and use John the Ripper and leave it there until it can't go any further. So it's not really difficult if you know a little bit how the company works in terms of passwords, the kind of passwords they use, the traditional industrial passwords. You can use the CSV. I told you about the scatter pass. There are many more dictionaries out there, and the password is 123, surprisingly. This is a classic in the industrial world. You may think this is a very silly demo. Well, you're right, but this is real life. I could bring you a very complicated demo with DLL injection, but actually, if I can do it like this, why should I complicate it more? Sometimes the simpler the attack, the more effective it is. So once you're inside, then you can do whatever you please. This is a more complicated, elaborate attack, which is about tricking the operator. Here we're watching a switch and a lamp. Let's pretend that this switch controls a valve, for example. It opens and closes a valve, and the lamp tells you when it's on and when it's off. We don't know what is behind the valve, but imagine big stuff in a big factory, things that can exploit sensitive stuff. So let's try to deceive this operator. We know we have now access to the device itself, and this is what we're going to do. We are going to take a look at the commands that we can launch on the web level. Sorry, this is not what I intended to do now. So this pops up for a few seconds only, so we need to be quick. Here we try to launch a command to an item, to an element, an SVG that tells whether the lamp is on or off. Simple, but important for the purposes we are trying to achieve. If we extrapolate this to a factory, well, this is a big deal because the lamp says it's off, however, the machine is on. I'm here and something may explode while I'm inside the factory, so we connect ourselves to the factory, to where the HMI is, with the passwords we obtained before. These aren't very elaborate attacks, as I said, but they can be very harmful. So we are attacking now the SVGs. Well, our access is denied, but I know that with Raspberry, I can escalate privileges or rights very quickly. So this is what I'm going to do. I'm going to take a chance. And now, I'm the super user. As simple as that. Here I am. I know where the route is, where the element is. So what can I do next? Now let's play with the operator and make things a little bit tricky to him. We're going to tell him it's on when it's off and vice versa. This is what we're doing right now. So to begin with, we do a backup in order to have a log of the changes that we've performed. Then you can automatize this, you can do a reverse shell, whatever. But it's a lot better to watch it this way, how the guy goes wrong, corrects himself, and so on and so forth. Maybe the other person doesn't have a device to detect that you are there, so you're in no hurry. You're sitting at your desk, and you can take your time. Maybe you don't have an idea of where you are or of how critical the process you're attacking is. Here you've changed it. So let's think as an operator now, as a machine operator. It's 3 a.m. The operator is taking a look at the HMI inside a factory. So imagine now there are a lot of lamps, a lot of other lamps, pipes, and many other processes going on which are more important than opening a valve. So imagine that only the status is changing. The purpose of the HMI is to show me the state. So I trust the device and I'm going to believe whatever it does, because the operator doesn't have any resources to tell whether this is a lie or this is the truth. This is someone's decision. Someone has to decide whether the factory should stop production or not. This is a stacknet. It is a bit archaic, but it is interesting to remember that it was one of the main or major advanced malwares for the industry. So this one would say that there was an important default in a nuclear power plant, and it managed to stop it. So this is serious stuff. This is a lot of money that is being lost. So this is a very simple demo, I admit it, But the impact that we may cause may be very high, so careful with that. I'm sorry, I was wrong. The attack hasn't taken place yet. Now the lamps are being changed right now. I went a bit too fast. So I'm going to fast forward it because it's really boring to watch a guy performing a CP.
Vale, ahora sí, ¿vale? Ahora ya está cambiado. Vale.
So now it changed. Here we go. As I've just said, this is a big issue in an industry.
Me voy a enchufar la presentación esta. Sitio actual. Vale. Bueno, básicamente esa era la demo.
So this was basically the demo. Okay, what are the conclusions? Well, the Internet of Things is more and more widely spread. There are smart toasters, smart robot dogs. Everything's smart now, and that is dangerous. If my fridge won't open and if I cannot have lunch, well, I'm going to be quite annoyed. I don't know about you. So now it is easy to exploit default passwords, etc., because these devices are thought for entertainment or for a very particular function, and they haven't really thought of security. Imagine the Barbie, or remember the Barbie case. That was a simple toy, but it was actually eavesdropping. Then the software versions used for implementation sometimes don't have the expected support. That is, maybe the community decided that the project wasn't going any further, but the people were continuing introducing these technologies inside their devices, so they are being left behind. These are communities that aren't updated, they don't report bugs or improvements or anything like that, so you cannot update software inside your embedded device. When it comes to the industrial level, these devices also have the vulnerabilities of the general embedded systems. And now with Industry 4.0, that has to do with introducing more sensors and more smart things inside the industry in order to have a better control of processes. In the end, they save a millisecond or something like that. And of course, the Internet of Things in the industry, which is also there. There are many terms, many things all mixed up. So it's all about introducing devices and gadgets. The communication protocols are vulnerable. Everybody knows that. Whether it is on an industrial level or on a website, depending on the web server you have. If you don't use a certificate, you can find yourself in trouble. Therefore, you need other security elements. And you're actually processing industrial processes. This is one of the highest dangers for the embedded systems. These are industrial processes. I can show you a couple of examples. These are real. The first one is in a mall. This is an embedded system on a screen. And here you see advertisements. But if the advertisements that pop up are not the ones that the client wants, well, that's not a big deal. However, on the other hand, you have a remote connection controlling lamps, for example, or lights. I don't have pictures of my customers' problems, but imagine that behind this you have a very critical thing. Not just a few lamps that are controlled. This is the industrial world, the big unknown. And this was basically it. Thank you very much for listening.